Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for our next session for the day. The session is Living in the Virtual World. To present the session, I would like to call upon stage the moderator for the same, Ms. Vaishali Neotia, who is co-founder and CEO at Merxius, India's most awarded augmented and virtual reality company. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Vaishali Neotia. Let's have Vaishali Neotia. I don't hear the energy. Let's have the claps going, ladies and gentlemen. Awesome. Good afternoon, ma'am. Pleasure having you here. Over to you. This, or you can have a seat and carry. Yes, of course, please.
A very good afternoon to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us here today when we talk about some of the terms that you've probably heard flying around. So before I begin, I'd just like to call upon stage all the other panelists. Dr. Apurv, if you could come up, please. Thank you. So Dr. Apurv Sharma, he's the founder of one of the most proliferant venture capitalist companies in India called Venture Catalyst. And they've invested a lot of money into advanced technology and companies innovating in the tech space. He's also actually invested in VR companies, so we'd love to hear a little bit more about that from him. And before I pass on the mic for a 2-minute intro, maybe I'll just call upon all the other panelists also. So Pankaj, if you could come up. So Pankaj is doing a lot of interesting work in VR in trying to make it more affordable for the common person. So we'll hear a little bit more about that from him. Please have a seat. Next, I'd like to call upon Mr. Rajneesh Bhandari. So he's one of those rare individuals who's on both sides of the table. So he's an investor as well as an entrepreneur, and we'll hear a little bit more about that from him. And with that, we come to the final panelist. If Ashish could come up. Ashish Sudhani. He's our in-house lawyer for this panel, and he will be sharing some of the legal aspects of what are the do's and don'ts of augmented and virtual reality. So before we go into introductions, a quick question. How many of you have heard these terms, virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality? A show of hands, please. And if I were to ask any of you, how many of you actually know what these technologies are and what the differences between them are, or have tried them? 2 hands? Everybody else raised it for knowing what the terms are. Well, okay, so I think that probably sets the stage for hearing a little bit more about what virtual reality or what augmented reality is. So maybe we'll just have a quick one-liner from everyone, and then we can go into the intros. So we'll start with Ashish. Yeah.
Right, coming from a legal perspective, the difference between virtual and augmented is, virtual is when you can feel things, do things. Augmented is when something is created for you while you are in that system.
Okay, interesting. Dr. Sharma.
My understanding is that virtual reality is something which you can, there's nothing exists, but you are creating it. And augmented reality is where there's something which you are augmenting. And of course, the 3D component, other thing automatically comes there. So that's the difference we've seen in the companies which is into virtual and augmented realities.
Hey, hi, I'm Pankaj. So virtual reality, according to me, is essentially first taking over your senses. First major, biggest sense you take over is your visual sight, then hearing, and then senses, and then haptic feedback and all of that includes. So virtual reality is just giving you a different experience than what you're currently having as a human being. Augmented reality is wherein, in virtual reality, you're usually isolated from the real world, but in augmented reality, you have the real world experience on which you have another stuff included, like digital augmentations in your real world.
So I think a great definition has been given differentiating both. So, to sum it up as augmented, virtual and mixed reality, I would say it is simulating interactive and engaging experience through hardware and software. That is this domain that we are talking about.
Interesting. Great answers. I think maybe it's a little clearer now for everyone. So just to sum it up, my personal definition of virtual reality is taking the real world into the digital world. So if you've seen people with those geeky headsets and they have no idea what the surroundings are, that's when they're in a digital world. That's virtual reality. And for all of you who've played Pokemon Go here, that is augmented reality, where you take the digital world into the real world. So you add any kind of digital information onto the world around you, be it objects, people, environment, that is augmentation or augmented reality. So, so now that we've set the tone for what these technologies are, I think we'll go into a nice introduction from everyone in terms of what they do and how they're connected with these technologies. So all of us here, one quick point is that we're all innovating or working with people who innovate in VR. So we have a lawyer who's working with the people who need to patent their innovations. We have an investor who looks at working and investing and taking to the next level companies or innovating. We have startups here who are changing and innovating ways of using VR in today's world. So, so we'll start with Dr. Apurv because he's the closest to Thai that I know here. So we'll start with you.
Venture Catalyst is basically a platform which they give the first check to startups. Last year we did 16 investments and close to 40 crore we had given to the startups. And we had a great year because we had, despite being a bearish market, we had 3 Series A and 2 exits. So, and we are investing in tech and non-tech, both companies. We are basically open to any startup which is, sort of have the potential to become big. So our focus is creating startup category leaders. And that's where, my first interaction with the virtual world was this Absentia VR, which was, immediately after we invested, the next round came in 6 months. So the company is into virtual reality, and that's where we started learning, and probably this is more to explore into this space, I'll say. I think there's a lot to explore in this space.
Great. Pankaj, if you could introduce yourself. Yeah.
Hey, hi. So I'm Pankaj. I'm co-founder and CEO of a company called Dimension NXG. So I'll just give a short idea about how we started Dimension NXG. So this was when we had our first VR experience, and we were like mind blown over what could be happening, right? What could be the future of technology like this? And then we figured out, okay, there is a huge potential future for something like this, but there are some inherent challenges, some technical challenges that have to be solved on various different levels. So that is wherein we figured out, okay, we do have expertise into vision, we do have strong understanding, strong category into creating one of the world's best scanning systems and all of that. Why don't we solve the problem of accessibility? How can we give, let's say if you think about Oculus and HTC Vive, that would cost you about 75,000 plus. How can we give the same quality of VR on a mobile device? So that is wherein we have created technology that lets a mobile VR user experience the content created for Oculus and HTC Vive. Plus, it also does the positional tracking. Like when you are using a mobile phone VR, you are just sitting in a single place. But using our technology, you can actually walk and immerse yourself into the virtual world.
Great. Rajneesh?
Yeah, so our startup Neuroequilibrium, we are building the world's first chain of vertigo, dizziness and balance disorder clinics, which affects 5% of the population, so about 60 million people in India. We have developed diagnostic equipments and have applied for patents for diagnosis of vertigo. And in about 30% of these patients, they require what is called vestibular rehabilitation. So we use virtual reality for providing them vestibular rehabilitation. And we are one of the very few centers across the world who have developed this kind of a product. The other thing that we are doing, there are 2 other things that we are doing in the medtech field in this vertigo and dizziness. The second is train doctors on certain maneuvers for vertigo and dizziness. So again, that's a very unique use case for using VR for training doctors. The third thing that we are doing is actually very interesting. So, the doctors.
The first 2 are not interesting?
So the doctors who are trying to treat vertigo patients, so vertigo is of various kinds. Somebody could get vertigo when they are getting off a ship. Somebody could get vertigo when they are at a certain height. Somebody would have vertigo when they are in a train and another train is passing by. All these are different kinds of vertigos where the patient has very different feeling and they affect different parts of the balance system. Now, when they describe it to the doctor has never experienced this. So for the first time, we are trying to create in VR conditions which are similar to what the patient feels, so that it is much easier for the doctor to understand the symptoms and correlate them with the clinical judgment. So I think that is a unique thing that we're trying to do.
That's very interesting, but how are you able to differentiate that from the vertigo that you also feel inherently in the virtual reality world? So a lot of people here who might have tried one of those headsets, if any of you have experienced, you do feel a bit of nausea. So how are you able to actually differentiate between what is caused by VR itself and what is caused by the disease?
No, so one of the things is that all the content we have developed ourselves, because the whatever you feel nausea about are basically for adults who are wanting their adrenaline to be high. What we build the VR systems or the vestibular rehabilitation for our patients are something which are very, very low in terms of gamification compared to what the normal products are. So you cannot use normal products. So like we have, so some people feel dizzy when they're sitting in a car next to a driver, correct? So we have created that kind of a game, but that car runs at the speed of about 5 kilometers an hour, which will not raise your adrenaline. So we, we have built products which will generate vertigo only in the kind of patients which would have that symptom and not in others.
That's actually very interesting. Ashish, coming to you.
So I'm Ashish. I'm from Nishit Desai Associates, a leader at Nishit Desai Associates, let me put it that way. We are a research-based law firm. In terms of VR and AR, we are currently looking at startups who are into VR and AR and to what extent they can go up to while not tipping any laws, and also looking at their investment from a legal and tax perspective so that they can benefit from it in the future.
So if I really, really hate someone and I create a virtual version of that person in a VR world and I'm just shooting him in that scenario, will there be legal ramifications of doing that?
So currently, I think we are all good. We can go ahead and shoot people. But just think about it. There is something called actus reus and mens rea in criminal law. Actus reus is the act of doing the act itself, and mens rea is the intention behind it. So if I did kill somebody in the virtual world, but then something happened to that person later on, can you come back and say that you had some intention, that's why you killed that person on the virtual world? Just something to think about.
Something to think about for everyone here. So, so now that everybody's introduced themselves, let me talk a little bit about what we also do. So my company, Mercius, our flagship product is called Red. And what we are trying to do is we're trying to move the expertise of being able to create VR content from developers like us to people like you, to designers, to anybody who's working with 3D files. We let you visualize that in VR instantaneously with our software Red. So that's again a way of shifting content from or the content creation from people who are experts at it to people who just want to work with a technology like virtual reality without needing any kind of coding or technical knowledge. So that's something that we are doing. And now let's get into what the whole buzz about virtual reality is around. So a lot of you might know that in India there's a seasonal concept of buzzwords. At one point there was e-commerce, now there's artificial intelligence, virtual reality, these terms that are thrown around. And probably it all began with one of the biggest deals that happened when Facebook put in $2 billion in Oculus Rift. And in fact now there's a point where there are so many legal lawsuits against Oculus that people are saying they might actually shut down. So we've come that whole circle sort of with the hype around virtual reality. So let's hear from our panelists in terms of, is VR just a buzzword, or where is the ecosystem really right now around virtual reality? So we'll start with Rajneesh.
Yeah, so I think we have these cycle of buzzwords, and definitely it's a buzzword. So as part of an angel fund, Rajasthan Angel Investors Network, we see about 200 startups in a year. And there are cycles. So now we have almost 50% of them with AI or machine learning. So it is, we have these fads and cycles. But the the technology is real and the use cases are real, and you will have. So there was this one of the studies where they said, you will have more than 100 million people by 2020, which will be using either video content or or live streaming or video gaming. So I think the use cases are real. What we need in India to understand is, the startups to understand is, that there are various components. So you have the hardware. Now that's the most difficult to break. So we need to be very clear, and as you were saying, before the session, that we do not have this environment where those kind of hardwares will be able to scale up very fast. So Oculus could do it, but again, they did not have a product and they were bought over. So we need to have the technology which is ready today, and as Steve Blank says, basically we need to leverage what is available today to be able to solve a real problem. So I think what is important is our startups build products which can solve today's problems, rather than trying to do a dream run where the going could be very difficult.
As an investor, frankly speaking, one of the best things what we observed in AR and VR companies is the unit economics are really great. And this is a space you will not see a company going up and going down, because use cases are very, very strong, and they are solving problems of the we have seen companies who have reduced the cost by 1/10 or even by 1/20th, right? So and those companies are solving the cost problem. They are solving the remote distance, remote problems, like into medical surgery. In fact, Absentia, they are into remote surgery also. They are, so with the company, like there was a company from Ireland, which is a $3 billion company. They've in fact very much interested to sort of buy that out piece, because that is something which is solving a real problem. And another use case which I would like to talk about is basically like the hospitals. Most of the hospitals, they have a huge real estate, and so they have a symbol basically, which basically helps you fix and things from this place to that place, even the shift something from this place to that place, and reduce the cost drastically. So the hospital owners who basically expanding their hospital in multiple cities, what happens? Otherwise they used to see the 3D structure and traditional ways. Now everything they can see in the simulated environment, and they can change the things accordingly. So, and the cost is also reduced. So their softwares are helping the expansion. Their softwares are helping reduce the timelines of so I think they're solving real problems. Globally, there are about 1,500 companies, close to $800 million got invested into a virtual reality space. And the India also, there are about 85 companies into virtual reality. So I don't think this is a buzzword or something. This is going to exist for long, and this is going to intensify. Like my previous panelist Miten was saying, the next $5 billion is going to come from India. Probably these kind of spaces, where you see the real companies emerging, you see the real businesses, yes, we are the first check cutters and we're the early investors, but these are real solid businesses which are coming into this space. So probably this is not going to die. It's going to grow, and that's why we are looking desperately good company in this space. Probably the next $1 billion companies will be coming from this space for sure.
Yeah, actually, India, in fact, is touted to be growing at a rate of 55% cumulative annual growth rate in specifically virtual reality, and globally, it's expected to reach $34 billion by 2022. So definitely, there is something there. So let's hear the startup perspective now.
So
yeah.
Personally, what framework I use to understand whether something is a fad or not is, because I believe virtual reality is not new. It's like, I think all of us must know that, like 20 years old. A lot of work has gone into it to categorize whether it's a fad or not. It was a hype then as well, but then the cost to assess something like that was very high then. So for anything to categorize whether it's a fad or not, you should check at the cost of access to something. Like the cost to access virtual reality has drastically gone down, so a huge mass adoption will happen. Then it doesn't remain a fad or something, because a lot of money is going in, and then the investors push, and then the startups founders push towards creating something out of it, creating or figuring out problems that can be solved using this, creates the industry itself.
Very, very well said. One of the things that we see is, specifically in augmented and virtual reality, if you see, for example, China, 100 or so companies in VR shut down there because there was suddenly so much demand. Suddenly so much supply, but not enough demand. There weren't enough people creating content. But then again, parallelly, if you see, the Chinese government announced a few weeks ago that they're actually creating a VR AR village where they will be housing 50 hardware startups specifically. And they're launching it in a couple of months now, phase 1. But that is also happening. So when we talk about hardware and software specifically, where do you see the market heading? Because we see so many of these big companies jumping into hardware. You have Sony, you have HTC, you have Google, definitely. Google, in fact, with their cardboard, they've sold more than 10 million cardboard units around the globe. Other companies are yet to catch up. Gear VR, I believe, has 5 million figures, but that's because most of it they gave free with the phone. And Oculus Rift, in fact, is only, say, 400,000 headsets or so. So where are you seeing hardware and software really go? And because they're so important, they coexist, and the software has been left to all the small players, how do we see this changing? So we'll start with you, Pankaj.
Yeah. So in other hardware and software, so when we started off, we were majorly into the hardware space. But then we figured out the ecosystem is not right as of now. Being in India, hardware requires a lot of capital investment. That becomes a challenge. And the second challenge is virtual reality is not completely tried and tested, or there are not 5 years or 10 years business that have really been successful out of this. So that leap of faith, there's not a lot of people who are ready for that. That's where we also figured out, okay, it is best left to people who have money. Like companies like Oculus, they could invest a lot into the hardware space. But for startups like ours, and specifically being in India with having such a great software talent, why don't we utilize that to solve the software-based issues? So that is where I believe it just depends on the kind of ecosystem in each country. Where China, I believe, it's the best place to move over the hardware. And for the software, the content part, I think India is the biggest. And specifically because in India, we have been doing a lot of VFX work for a really, really long time. It's not clear out there because a lot of this work for US-based movies, it's completely done in India. So the people creating content the talent has already been in India. Why don't we utilize that?
Rajneesh, if you could share your thoughts about this.
I think if we see, let's say, 5 years down the line, there'll be 10 successful hardware, like we have Oculus or we have HTC, we will have, let's say, gloves, we will have platform. So there'll be maximum of 10 hardware companies. And there'll be 1,000 companies in software which will be successful of both kinds. Companies which are providing engineering services, so as they are trying to convert HTC content to, let's say, Android, and there'll be content companies. So I think for startups in India, it is the success rate will be much more if they are into the software thing. And hardware is basically being, would be taken by large companies. And so that success would be one is 2,000 or 1 is to 10,000. And I would so suggest that we should concentrate on solving actual problems using software and the available hardware.
Apurva, your thoughts, because you've been through this cycle.
So in fact, yeah, there were 4 patents Upshinsha had, and the pretty good hardware they developed in the past. So, but the ecosystem in India is still not that mature to support the hardware startups, and that's where we felt that why not focus on developing the technology and create something big out of it, and then this startup completely pivoted to software side, because China is beating everyone in the hardware side, and even the cost factor and a lot of other things, right? So we felt that let's outsource that part there. So one of the things which of course we expect in the future from the policymakers, that if they can create something for supporting this hardware startups, because something like the way China is doing into AR VR space, I think that's something will make a lot of difference in our life here. But otherwise, definitely, we definitely have an edge, and that's where our startups are mostly focused. So coming back to your original question, that is whether it's software or hardware, I think there's some cases where there are startups who have an edge even in the hardware, but they're rare. That's what in the past evaluation. But yeah, I mean in the AR space, there could be a possibility, because what I felt, I think the company who has raised the maximum money so far is Magic Leap. They have raised up $1.2 billion, in the world, and they sort of have a solid component of that. So you want to see something like that coming in India, so you need to have I think support for those kind of startups also. So probably I think with the policies change which is coming in India, I'm quite hopeful that that support will also come in India, and we'll have great companies coming in that space also.
Very true. I mean, looking at Magic Leap, people still don't really know what they're doing, and yet they've gotten that kind of funding. So looking at that in
My first
India,
interaction was Magic Leap with this. It was a dolphin show. It was augmented to an AA that everybody felt the dolphins are coming on us. And the showers. So it was so real, right? And it was all using Magic Leap. So we were so amazed, and after that we decided to invest in that space, and that's where the Absentia was. I think at that time only we sort of looked at, and
So on Magic Leap, so we are trying to use Magic Leap to train the doctors when they do a certain maneuver. Basically, when the hand comes in the field of view, the Magic Leap recognizes it, and so we are trying to manipulate it to see if the doctors can do maneuvers, and we can get a feedback that it has been done correctly or not, because we can actually map where the hand has gone.
interesting. But a lot of this could still be hype. I mean, if you look at, for example, HoloLens, which Microsoft has branded as a mixed reality headset, even though essentially they are pretty much, augmented reality. Their field of view is, I believe, 45 degrees. So, that's probably a marketing thing that they've done, starting off with the term mixed reality. In fact, most of you might have heard of Google Glass also, which, where they had all these fancy videos of everybody using the Google Glass and augmented reality in daily lives, and now you don't hear anything of it, because the device failed as such. So, so there is still a lot of thing between the hardware and software aspect of the VR, AR space, but if you look at it from the legal perspective, like in India, for example, you can't patent software. In fact, one of the things would be that you want a hardware component as part of the system, so you can patent the system or maybe certain innovative aspects. So why is that not, aiding maybe people into getting a little bit more into the hardware side of things? So what's your perspective, Ashish?
So I think with hardware, as I think was said on the panel also, that the cost involved with hardware is quite high, and therefore people are not willing to invest into hardware very easily. Apart from that, I think there is also a very high tax burden on investing into hardware, because India being a 30% tax rate, actually you are quite definitely hit with it. And we have special economic zones where we have tax rebates, but we are not so developed to go into an SEZ and start manufacturing chipsets and then start selling to retail. So I think those are some factors which stop us from doing hardware, and therefore software is given more preference. Also, having been to some of these universities, I see students, generally being more adapted towards software and not hardware, and therefore, I think after they come out of their engineering colleges, they are like, मुझे ये software बनाना है, इससे ये हो पाएगा. I mean, that's their deal in life, I think.
True, but then how would they patent the innovation that they've done? That there's always the intellectual property issue there.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. In fact, I was thinking about this, and I'm this huge Batman fan, and I keep thinking of the Batmobile, and that feeling that you would get while sitting in the Batmobile, that experience. And then I thought, can DC Comics actually patent or in fact copyright that experience? They can't, and that's the problem. I think going forward, we are going to that place where all of this will start becoming important, and then laws will be made with respect to how we can, store them or copyright them or patent them. I think we are still to go there.
Makes sense. Pankaj, you were smiling when I brought up the whole you can't patent the software.
Yeah,
So-
that becomes a huge challenge, specifically when the field is so new. But then it gives age to companies who are in the hardware space. So let's say there's Oculus, there is IBM, who is also who has a lot of patents in this space. So for software companies, that becomes a huge challenge, and we've been struggling with that. We have been figuring ways out of how do we patent it, but then it's a huge challenge, yes.
One of the things that we've done to address the same issue that we've had being a software company is we've patented parts of what we are doing. So maybe some of the features being the USP of the kind of work we are involved with. So we're not patenting Red as a platform or a software, but parts of Red, which we're saying that this is new and this has not been done. So this particular thing is something that we have IP over. So so probably like Pankaj was saying and like Ashish mentioned, there have to be ways to go around some of these hurdles. But it looks like the whole shift is still towards software and not a lot of hardware action in India. Right. So, we've seen 2016 it was touted to be the year of VR. In fact, when we were starting out going into 2016, everybody said this is going to be the year of VR. And now that we've come to the end of it, a lot of people are saying that, it wasn't and it was a huge flop and VR is gone, which is again a subjective opinion because, if you ask me, I would say that there have been so many investments in the space. So many of the big guys have gotten into it. They've bought so many smaller companies trying to work on hardware and software. In fact, HP approached us some time back saying that they've created a computer specifically geared towards handling VR/AR applications. So there is a lot of things that are going into that ecosystem. But from the consumer point of view, you see that VR is still not a commercial success. So where do we think, and some thoughts that I'd love to hear from you, where are we with this whole situation?
See, I think the whole VR thing across the world also is not that old, right? Recently met Value from Ireland. They're a $1 billion company in that space. Almost all the big hospitals in India, they use their technology for the simulation purpose. They were here to evaluate some of our startup, even Absentia also to, they're working together now. The across the globe in the VR space, the maximum a company has raised is just $200 million. That's, I think, Tyro or something, right? So there are only 3 companies who have raised above $100 million. So this space still, sort of picking up. Although in India, this picked up last year was something which we have seen 7-8 companies enter into that space, and they raised good amount. And the use cases is, I think the awareness is still, and they're not, it's growing now. So the more the awareness towards the benefit of using the VR, the more the adoptability of the product and the more the market will be built. So I think it will take time, but it's not going to, it's definitely going to grow very fast in the near future. That's what I can say.
According to me, one of the biggest challenges in VR is like when I first saw what VR was, I went on the Oculus website and I looked at the price and I was like, मुझसे ना हो पाएगा. The cost itself, right? It's becoming a big challenge. There it's $700, here it's $1,000 in India, the same device. That becomes a big, huge challenge. And what has happened is a lot of people in countries like in Asian countries have experienced VR only through cardboard, which to my experience is crappy VR. You can have really, really good VR using Oculus, HTC Vive, even Samsung Gear on a mobile device, it's really good. So people in the US or other continents who have experienced good VR see the potential of it. But here that becomes a challenge only because we have access to low quality VR. That becomes a huge challenge. The cost factor is a huge challenge.
So I'll just give you use cases of medtech and health tech and how it will change. So just to give you a few examples, so there is this company called, product called AED for EU, where you can basically go and like Pokemon search for the nearest defibrillator. That could save lives. There is AccuVein, where basically there's a handheld device which you put on the hand and it will tell you, so when a nurse puts in a needle, in 40% cases the first time the needle is not put correctly. So this AccuVein, basically you can see the veins and the success rate of putting the needle increases 4x, which is very high. You have, so like we said, we are building a technology which will help doctors understand what the patient is going through. So there is a similar company which is called iDecide. What they do is they are able to simulate, let's say a patient has cataract. How does he actually see? If they can simulate that and show it to, let's say, the attendant and even the doctor, that what is he seeing before the cataract operation and after the cataract operation or any of the other diseases, correct? So if a field of view is missing, if he's seeing only half the image, there are patients who see inverted images. So how do you simulate that? So those are the use cases. hollow anatomy, which has been developed in collaboration with Cleveland Clinic, is going to be the de facto norm for teaching anatomy in all universities. So I think Manipal University is already on the way to use it. So those will be the kind of use cases, both in terms of training of doctors and in terms of interaction with the patient, that VR, AR would be used extensively. So I think there are tremendous use cases for AR, VR. The only thing that, as you're talking about fad, we need to be aware of is that, let's say when we see about, every month we get 4 or 5 cases where people are trying to build for real estate, products using VR. So that has become like every school, every college students are trying to do that, and that's like a Me Too product. Me Too is a very soft word for that. So we have to be aware that it has to be a niche, it has to be unique, and there has to be an actual problem that you're solving.
In fact, one of the things that we've seen as a company, where we started out with augmented reality back in 2012, and we were trying to do it as a service, and our probably single biggest client was the Indian Army, because military, as we know, is one of the sectors which adopts advanced technology very quickly. But trying to push it, or push the technology itself in other sectors, was met by a lot of roadblocks. If you look at it in terms of the services that happened, and even now, most people look at AR, VR as being something restricted to the entertainment industry, or something that's gimmicky. But there are so many real use cases around the world. So for example, real estate. If you're telling people that you're looking at buying a house and all I'm showing you is a blueprint or something on a computer screen or some model of it, how do you know what you're getting into and what you're buying? You have no sense of context. 80% people cannot understand a blueprint. 60% people don't have spatial reasoning. So what are you really selling them? If virtual reality as a technology can make your life easier, where you're instantly communicating what you're trying to sell to the customer, instead of that 20-minute discussion explaining the property, you just give them the app, they put it on, and they're in the property. They can take a tour of the whole place. So what is the reason that's stopping Indian players from getting into this? One, obviously, is nobody wants to spend money. And 2 could be that this is technology and it's something that you're trying to force into people's psyche. That's something that we've seen hasn't worked. In fact, the reason why we pivoted from services to product, where Red now is a product, is because we realize that if we're trying to force people to do something new, it's a problem. But if we're telling them whatever 3D files you already have, we just give you a way to view the same file in VR, that's been met with less reluctance and less resistance. So what do we see as some of the challenges of acceptance of VR as a technology in India?
So quickly, I think 3 things. One is that the cost has to come down to at least 1/10 of what it is today. The second is that there has to be local content, vernacular content which is specific to India. And the third is, so I think these are the 2 things. And the third is things like, 360-degree cameras, and so, availability of those kind of technologies to create that kind of content at a very cheap cost. So I think these are the 3 things that do.
I think I have a mixture of your answer. One is the cost, it has to drastically go down, and second is content. The quality of content, I think personally, is now improving, but it can improve way further.
Any other thoughts on the challenges from, say, the investor perspective, or what are you looking for when startups come and pitch VR, AR to you guys?
See, basically in AR and VR, the startup product quality is the key, right? Because I've seen Value's product, which is one of the biggest company there, and the products in some of the startups. So the conversion of use cases into the business will happen only when the quality is great. So I think there the more research and more innovation and more time has to go from the startup side. And if that happens, I think there will be great companies, and we'll be happy to invest more in that space. That's what I can see.
Interesting. So just before we wrap up, I think we're out of time. Just a quick thought in terms of what could drive consumer adoption. So one of the industries I think that would really contribute to consumer adoption of VR is the porn industry. A lot of people, especially in India, the word porn or anything to do with sex is taboo. I mean, recently I was at an event where an investor actually walked out because one of the companies pitching was selling adult sex toys online. But if you look at it, and this is just conjecture, but one of the quarters last year in India actually saw $3.4 million worth of VR headsets coming in. That could be because because the use case was in the porn industry. But if we look at it, what are the legal challenges around wanting to do something in that area here, apart from the taboo, which again is hypocritical considering most of our film industries are all pretty much soft porn. So Ashish, your POV.
Ma'am, we're running out of time. We unfortunately will have to cut. Just
Just
one
wrapping
last
this
thing,
up.
yes,
Sure.
please. Thank you very
So
much.
very quickly, so I think with the porn industry, I think whatever is illegal today will always remain illegal. That is, selling of porn is illegal while you can sit and watch it at home. That should be fine. With VR, I think two important points. One, that it should be out of reach of children. And second, what is the space that you are entering? In a VR, once you have put in the headset, are you going beyond the space of your home and beyond the four corners of your house? If you are, then there is a definite issue because then it is viewing porn in public. And then what do you do about it?
Interesting. Well, thank you so much. I'm sorry we don't have time for questions, so all of us are here. Any question that you have, please come up and ask us. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your time, panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you for being such a patient audience.
Thank you very, very much. I request the ladies and gentlemen to please stay on the stage for a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, this was rather an insightful presentation, living in the virtual world, rather the panel discussion. Let's have a round of applause for our moderator, Ms. Vaishali Neotia, and of course, the participants, Dr. Apurva Rajan Sharma, Mr. Ashish Sodhani, Mr. Rajneesh Bhandari, and Mr. Pankaj Rao. Thank you very much. Quickly, we'd like to provide you with or rather give you a token of appreciation for being present here today. For the same, I'd like to call upon stage Mr. Swaz Patil, Chairman, sir. Good afternoon. Please join us. Mr. Swaz Patil is the Chairman, TIE Global, Founding President, TIE. Sir, if you could please present the token of appreciation to the lady and to the gentleman, and also have a quick photo opportunity with everybody. Here you go, sir. Okay, sir. Here you go, sir. Sorry. Right here, sir. Sorry. Right here. Please take a picture together. If we can please have a quick group photo opportunity, sir, with everybody. If you all could join us in front of the tables and the chairs, that would be better. If everybody could be here, so that we can have a quick group photo opportunity with everybody. Okay, also I gotta quickly go ahead and take a selfie with you guys before you guys go because this needs to go on Twitter. I can see everybody. Yes, I can. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much. Please, thank you.